Hello and welcome to the Boston College Alumni Education webinar. My name is Jean Chiser and I oversee the Alumni Education Programming for the Alumni Association. Throughout this webinar, you are invited to submit questions by typing them into the question box in the webinar dashboard. Your questions will be sent directly to us here at the Alumni Association and will only be viewable by us. At the end of the webinar, our presenters will answer as many of your questions as possible. Throughout the webinar, we will be asking for your participation through a series of poll questions like the one I'm going to launch right now. If you could please take a moment to choose the answer that best works for you. And please vote now. Okay, looks like most people have voted. Give it just a few more seconds. Okay, so what we're seeing is that most people, 56% of people are saying that they have been out of the workforce for 0 to 5 years. 16% have been out 5 to 10, 15% 10 to 15, and 11% have been out for over 15 years. Okay, I am now pleased to introduce today's webinar presenters. Carol Sabia is a 1983 graduate of Boston College's Carroll School of Management, and she's the Vice President of Talent at Reach Higher. And Addie Swartz is the CEO of Reach Higher. I am happy to welcome and turn this webinar over to Carol and Addie.
Thank you, Jean. This is Carol Sabia, and I want to tell you my BC story. When I entered the MBA program at Boston College, I went to the part-time program, so I was able to learn at night and apply it to my day job. And that worked out really well for me because when I entered the MBA program, I was a financial analyst at Honeywell, and when I completed the MBA program, I was a manufacturing plant manager. So it was really very beneficial for me to go through BC MBA program. I spent two-thirds of my career in line management with P&L responsibility, and then about a third of my career in talent management. I'm currently, as you mentioned, the VP of Talent for Reach Higher, and I also have a private coaching practice. And I'd like to turn it over to Addie to make an introduction herself.
Hi, I'm Addie Swartz. I'm a serial entrepreneur. I have spent the last 20 years building 3 companies focused on women and girl empowerment. For this company, I was home caring for my youngest child who was hurt, and I saw all of these amazingly accomplished women who wanted to go back into the workforce but just couldn't for a variety of reasons. And so I decided to make a mission to create a company that had a pathway to get women back into the workforce. So my motto is a career break shouldn't be a career breaker, and that's why I created Reach Higher. Jean, I'd love it if you could launch our second poll.
Absolutely. So the question is, where are you right now in your job search? Everyone, please take a moment to choose the answer that best fits for you. Okay, we're going to give this just a few more seconds. And I'm just jotting down the answers. Okay, we're going to close that poll now, so thank you for voting. And so what people are saying is that 46% are saying they want to go back to work, but they don't know where to start. 23% have started applying. 13% said they have started interviewing. 12% are currently working, and 6% said they haven't really decided whether they want to go back to work or not. Okay, Addie, back to you.
Okay, so what I want to do now is just quickly review what the outline for today's webinar is all about. We'll first talk about the challenges that are out there that some of you may have faced already or will be facing. where you actually start, and then focus on telling your story from the elevator pitch through the interview. So let's go to challenges of reentry. First, the big question is, where do you begin? The process can seem really daunting. You have to first decide, what do you want? Do you want full-time or part-time? Do you want a big company, a small company, a startup? How to even make that transition, and then how do you make it all happen for yourself? So there are a number of hurdles, and as I see that 46% of you have wanting to go back to work but don't know where to start, there are some significant challenges, and first it's that resume gap, and that void, that what have you been doing for the last 2, 3, 5, 8 years, 10 years. Secondly, if you've been out of the workforce more than 2 years, I feel, your technical skills are outdated. Technology is changing so rapidly, and just to keep up to date on the new tools and technologies it's important and critical, but yet where do you begin? Many who have stepped out of the workforce for a little bit longer might not have references that are up to date, so when you get into those interview opportunities, you may not have up-to-date references, and that's a challenge. If you have taken some time off, you may have used your time importantly in your community, in your town, in your school, or your kids' schools, doing volunteer work or working for a nonprofit. How does that translate into work experience, and how do you talk about that and speak about that when you're in an interview? Social media seems extremely daunting to someone that hasn't been around and hasn't been up to date. So how do you get back up to speed with that? And then lastly, even looking for a job has changed. Search techniques, the online dynamics, it's all different in looking for a job today than it was before. So we're going to actually launch our next poll. Jean, so let's do that.
Okay, so the next question we have for you is, what have been the biggest obstacles in your job search? And here you can choose all that apply. Please vote now. Okay, we've got a few more seconds. Okay, thank you all for voting. I'm going to close that now. And this is what we're hearing, is that some of the biggest obstacles will go down the list. 53% say that you have a gap in skills, technical and social media. 68% say there's a gap in work experience on their resume. 26% say they're out of practice interviewing and can't really get past that first interview. 46% feel a lack of confidence. And 43% said they don't know where to start. Okay, back to you.
Okay, so as we all know, and we're all in this together, we're all feeling the same way, that, skills are outdated, gap in work experience, maybe confidence needs to be up a bit, and just not knowing where to start. So let's turn it to the realities of the job search in the 21st century, which is a little different than it was even 5-10 years ago. First off, there's the fact that the success rate for applying online is so low. It's on average 2 to 4%. So you might have started looking, and you might have started seeing interesting opportunities online and sending your resumes and not getting anywhere. That's not surprising, because so few applicants actually make it through the hopper that way. So remember that, and obviously you're here today with us, so you'll now know to do other strategies on top of that. Number two, there are all kinds of applicant tracking systems that focus on keyword searches and tools. There's obviously all kinds of tools related to LinkedIn. There's LinkedIn Recruiter that a lot of companies are relying on that bring certain resumes and certain skill sets up to the top. So, you know, folks are searching for skills, education, experience, and really keywords that they're finding in the LinkedIn profiles and the resumes to highlight are those individuals interesting and compelling to then bring to the next level. Thirdly, you know, most employees are getting hired through employee referral. So, you know, this whopping 64%. So companies have really recognized this, creating programs for their employees to refer other people, even financially creating incentives for them, and that has been a very valuable way to gain access to an organization. Now I'm going to take it and turn it over to Carol to talk a little bit about the overview of bridges and barriers.
So what we're going to cover today is where to begin, which as we found from the poll, most of you are struggling most with that. I want to go back, but I don't know where to start. So we're going to give you a few tips of how to get started. And then we're going to focus on what is your story and how to tell your story, because we find that's so important in everything that you'll be doing in this area. We did have another poll here, Jean, we wanted to launch around what kind of support people have at this point in their journey.
Right, okay. So what support do you have for your reentry into the workforce? And again, choose all that apply. Please vote now. Okay, looks like almost everyone has voted, so I'm going to close this down and I'll share the results. So what people are saying is that 68% say they have a supportive spouse or partner, 58% have a supportive friend, 9% are working with a career coach, 19% say they haven't asked for or thought about getting support, and 8% of people are saying they don't have any support. So Carol, back to you.
Great. Well, it's great news that you do have support. 68% of you have someone, actually, and if we count the supportive friend, it sounds like quite a few of you have some support in your network. So that's really important, because the first thing we suggest about where to begin is to get some support. This can be a daunting thing to get back into work after you've been out for a while, and it's daunting not just from a you know, where to begin and what to do, but emotionally it's very daunting. Your confidence may have taken a hit from being out of the workplace, and as well, anything you do now, you need some accountability, because it's hard to stay on track for this process. So we strongly suggest that you get some support. That buddy can be a spouse, a partner, a friend, whatever, but get someone who you trust, who will be honest with you, who will give you feedback. It could be someone else who's also looking to get back into work after a career break, and you can become buddies to support each other doing that. There are coaches out there that you can get help from, and there's also programs, and we'll talk a little bit later about what ReachHire provides, but there are other programs out there as well. So, but get some kind of support. If you leave with nothing else today, leave with that message that don't try to do it alone. It really is something that you're going to need some help with. The second thing that we encourage people to do is to reconnect, and that's across the board, and starting with yourself. Very often, because we've had a career break and maybe we've been taking care of kids or an elderly family member, or maybe just off for some other reason, you've disconnected with the person you were when you worked. So it's really important to get back in touch with who that person is. And some ways of doing that is you may connect with former colleagues, you know, just have coffee out or lunch and just talk about what you used to work on. Ask the person that you used to work with what value you brought, when, you know, what do they remember you as doing when you were in the workplace. But really start to connect with your former colleagues. What's been going on in your industry? You know, if you've been reading the Wall Street Journal every day for the whole time you've been out, that's great, but most people haven't. And there's so many resources out there now on the internet that you find out what's going on in your industry, and make sure you're up with the latest buzzwords, latest trends. That's another thing you can talk with former colleagues about, what's been going on since you've left. And then your functional skills. You really need to update yours. If you're a financial analyst, then you should be cracking the book on Excel skills, lots of online tools for that. If you're a marketing person, you really need to get up to speed on online marketing tools. You need to get back into, for social media, most of us can, check with a 12-year-old niece or nephew or daughter or son to get up to speed on social networking. But these are all things you need to get upgraded. So just think about what it is, what kind of skills you needed when you were in work in the past, and what should you be updating now. And then the third thing is really to start to capture and refine your story. You're going to be selling you, and it's really important that you know who you are and what you bring to an organization. So I'd like to, Jean, if you would launch our last question.
We'll do that right now. So here's the question for everyone. How clearly can you state the value that you bring to an organization? Please select one now. Okay, and I am going to close that now. Thank you for voting. And here are the answers. 8% are saying they know exactly what they can contribute and they can express it clearly. 26% say I have a good idea of my value and I can express it well. 50% are coming in as saying I have a good idea of my value but I can't express it easily. And 16% say I am not that clear on what value I bring to an organization. So before I hand it back to Carol, I just want to remind people to please submit your questions at any time in the question box on the side so that Carol and Addie can answer those at the end of the presentation. And Carol, back to you.
Okay, the answers to this question are very common. Most people cannot easily express what they bring, what value they bring to the organization. And we find this is a critical starting point, because if you can't express what value you bring, how are you going to convince someone that that value will be helpful to their organization? So I'm going to spend a fair amount of time in the rest of this webinar talking about that message. And we call it your story. It's what do you do well? What would others say about you? And that's where talking with former colleagues may help you to get crystal clear on that. How do you do your work differently from others, and what makes you unique? And I find when I'm coaching someone on this, I'll ask them to tell me their stories of accomplishments and successes and failures in their work life, and they get done telling me, and I'll say, so what are some themes that come up for you? And often they can't come up with concrete themes. Just from having listened to them, I can tell, okay, they're very diverse. They can go into different industries and be successful with their skills, or maybe they were a lawyer, but what they really did well was form strategic partnerships. So sometimes just talking with someone else, they can see some of these themes that come out that you can't see because you're almost too close to it. So that's what we really suggest that you come up with. What sets you apart? What value do you bring to an organization? And we're going to go over some samples of what these themes look like, and we won't. We're not going to read them all, but it's a way of you going back later and maybe crafting your own. And so the first one is about a recruiter. Now, there's millions of recruiters. What sets this person separate from others is they're a recruiter in high tech. So high tech is a place where there's a lot of hiring going on. And what further sets them apart is that they build strong relationships both with the candidates and the hiring manager. And so that when this recruiter presents a candidate, they're very likely to be a good match with the hiring manager because they really understand what's needed. And that results in high retention where the person stays working at that organization. You want to be always asking yourself, so what? I'm a recruiter, so what? And so in filling out the answers to that, we'll go on to the next one, the marketing analyst. You know, marketing is a very broad term. It can mean a multitude of things. So this person, you know, it's specific to consumer goods products, and it's all stages of product introduction and growth. So it's being more concrete about what marketing means for this person. The next one is Addie. She's already talked about being a serial entrepreneur. Now, there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there, but she successfully launched, built, and sold businesses. So, you know, it's what sets her apart. I have another couple of sample story themes. Project manager. You can be a project manager for a construction project, a fundraising dinner. I mean, project management skills come in all different flavors. This person has you know, it's a technical understanding and a tech web services and networking area. So it's, you know, somebody where you can actually think, okay, if I'm looking for a software project manager, this person may be a good person because they have that technical understanding. The software developer, people are looking for, you know, what programming skills do you have? And this person has taught themselves some additional programming skills, so they're showing some self-motivation. In the last one, is the financial analyst. That we encourage people to mention companies if they add value, like Fidelity is a well-respected company in the Boston area, so mention Fidelity. And this person sold and serviced mutual funds to individuals and corporate clients. So financial analyst could be a lot of things. It could be a budget, or it could be what this person is doing. So really try to get at what is it you do in a way that leaves a picture with the person you're talking to. Okay, and we're going to move to where you use this story. And you really, the reason why we focus so much on this story and the themes is because you really use it in everything else you do in the job pursuit. So when you do your introduction or an elevator pitch, what we call, you want to know what themes from that story you want to highlight there. In your LinkedIn and resume profiles, you're going to be reinforcing those themes with examples. And when you're interviewing with someone, you want you know, those themes to come across and to support them with specific examples to reinforce them. So this is something that it's so important to get clear and to feel confident about because you use it in all of the processes in terms of looking for a job. We're limited in time today, so we're going to talk about the elevator pitch. I'm going to touch on that and give you some tips for that. And we're also going to give you some samples of profile summaries that you can use in your resume and LinkedIn. And we'll start with the elevator pitch. So this is, whether you're at a cocktail party, you're at the playground, you're at a professional organization's networking event, you need to have an introduction. And if someone says, so tell me about yourself, and you look at them like a deer in the headlights, that's not a good way to start. The other thing that isn't a good way to start is to say, well, I've been off for 7 years, I haven't worked, and I did some volunteer work, but it wasn't paid. And I mean, is that the first impression you want to leave with someone? And we often find that's where people start because that's where they're feeling most vulnerable. So you want to start with who you are and what you can contribute to an organization. And you want to start positive. And so let me go on to this. Why it matters is because it's going to help you in everything. I mean, even if you run into an old friend, you want to have what you're doing, so because they may be able to connect you with someone who can help you at this point. So identify your goal. What's the objective of in your elevator pitch? And this varies from time. You know, it may be that you just want to get an informational interview from someone. So you want to, you want to talk with someone who will either interview you or who will refer you to someone who could do an informational interview. Maybe you just want to practice introducing yourself, and that's a different goal than getting a job. And you may want to get a job. So depending on the situation and the context, think about what is my goal and what do you want the person you're talking to remember about you. And that's why starting with my career break and I didn't get paid and all that stuff, that's not what you want them to remember. You want them to remember that you are a professional and you have skills that can be applied to companies. communicate your X factor, like what's different about you. I always stress that I have strong line management experience, so when I apply that experience to talent management, I bring the business focus into my work. So what is your X factor? What is it that sets you apart, that makes you unique in what you do? And then engage with a question. This is a conversation. It's not you quickly reciting your resume. You know, you're trying to engage with the person so that you can ask for something. You know, whether it be just, do you know anyone else who could help me, or do you have any feedback for me, or do you know what's going on in this industry, whatever it is. So be thinking of this is your starting point. This isn't, you have to get all the information out. You just want to start to engage someone else in a conversation. And then draft it out. Write it down and practice it. And practice in front of the mirror or record yourself on your cell phone. I mean, it's a little scary to see ourselves doing that, but it's really very effective. And get comfortable with it. You want to be using terminology and language that is comfortable for you. Don't make it sound like a script that you've memorized, but rather it's a conversation that you're having with someone else. And make sure you're really, really comfortable with that. Okay? So here's a sample, and I'll just read through it, and we'll talk a little bit more about it. I'm a financial analyst, okay, so what? My background's in auditing, data analytics, and compliance in the banking and telecom industries. I've also been a lecturer in business for the past 10 years, both in Italy and the U.S. Now the person you're talking to might say, oh, Italy, I've been to Florence. Where in Italy were you? You know, it's a conversation starter, so you may go off there and just talk about Italy, or maybe they're a lecturer too and they want to talk about that. So you're giving them some interesting information that you can connect with them on. And then the grabber is what I love to do and where I was most successful was finance marketing manager, telecom industries, negotiating large contracts. So, you know, this is the value I've brought in the past. So if you're looking to negotiate contracts or work in marketing, finance marketing, or telecom industry, you've given some information. And then always ask a question. You know, what about you? What's your background? Now, sometimes you might ask that question earlier, or they may have asked you some questions about the telecom job. So you play it by ear. Try not to be too scripted, but always be trying to get information about the other person and be genuinely interested in that other person. You know, really find out what their background is, because you don't know where you may connect. Okay, so that's a little kind of a top level, and there's some resources at the end we'll talk about to help you with your elevator pitch. And now I'm going to turn it over to Addie.
Thank you so much, Carol. Now we're going to move into the LinkedIn and resume portion of our webinar, focusing specifically on the career profile summary. So first, it's shocking to know, but most people take an average of 6 seconds to scan a resume or to look at a LinkedIn profile. They want to get a quick snapshot, and that's it. So unfortunately for many of us that want to wordsmith everything and just really focus on that, it's not as important. And just reading the top third of a resume is about where it's at. So that's just something to really take into account. Substance over style. I think that we like to describe everything we do. We want to get credit for everything we do, and many times we spend a lot of time in whatever initiative we're doing, especially through the jobs that we have. But it's really the substance, the meat of the matter. Description doesn't cut it on a resume. It's really important for readers to know what you can do and how well you can do it, or how well you did it, very quickly and succinctly, because they're just not going to spend enough time learning more of it. You need to use action, words, results-oriented language. For example, you know, not just describing what you did in the activity that you worked on, but increasing profit by X%, reducing overages by 35%, launching a new product initiative which generated 40% new growth and revenue objectives for the company. So really honing in on what the deliverables were, what the results of your activity was, not just describing the activity itself. So the career profile summary certainly sets the stage. So now we're going to drill down a little bit more into this, into your branding statement, and we're going to actually show an example of a before and after in a minute. But it's not an objective. It's not really a description of what you want to get or what kind of job you want to land. It's more, here, this is what I am and how I can add value. You want the person to be focused on what you can do for them versus what they can do for you. And that's a nuance, but it's a really important nuance in presenting yourself to an opportunity and an organization. So, you know, conveying the value you bring to the job by focusing on your core skills. And by the way, again, by focusing on those core skills, you're really enabling the keywords to come up in a job search as well. Focusing on, you know, with high-level examples with key areas of expertise, and enabling that employer to see you as really qualified for that role. Lastly, you know, there are some tipping point items. If you have a special language, or if you have done something a little unusual outside of that specific position, maybe in a volunteer capacity in the organization you were in, by creating a new group internally into the organization, those kinds of things really make a difference and set you apart. It's going back again to that X factor that Carol spoke about. Now we're going to go towards a simple career profile summary. I'm going to have Carol read the before.
Okay. So the before is experienced financial analyst with a broad background in banking, telecommunications, bank auditing, data analytics, bank risk analytics, bank risk compliance, and executive education. Former National Bank Examiner with the Office of the Controller of the Currency International, experience in Europe in telecommunications and higher education, business lecturer at Holt International School of Business and UMass Lowell, fluent in Italian.
Okay. So somebody that reads that really isn't going to know enough about what you have done. So let's look at the after for a second. An experienced financial analyst in domestic and international banking, telecommunications, bank auditing, data analytics, bank risk analytics, bank risk compliance, and executive education. Negotiated career agreements. Negotiated carrier agreements up to $50 million. Bank examiner for $800 million in assets. Business lecturer, Holt International School of Business, UMass Lowell, fluent in Italian, Boston College MBA, banking and finance. So that's an example where there's a lot of things in there that somebody could jump off of. First of all, you might be meeting somebody that's also a Boston College alum. So the power of that is very valuable in breaking the ice and starting a conversation. Your resume just may get picked up when somebody else's isn't. Secondly, focusing on domestic and international, wow, this person can bring two different things to the equation. I might not be looking for somebody that way right at this moment, but they could grow into an opportunity as the organization grows. Negotiating carrier agreements. This is a person that actually has presence, understands business development, and actually can negotiate deals. Very attractive. And obviously doing heavy hitting with $800 million in assets. So I suddenly have a much different picture of this person, and they're the same person. They just presented themselves a bit differently, and I would say more compellingly. Okay, so now let's go on to the gap. What do you do about the gap? So first of all, we've been focusing on the profile summary. So we always say that that profile summary should be at the top, and we just spent some time thinking about that and talking about that. We then want and recommend that you focus on your experience, your work experience. Again, we mentioned earlier, many of you may have very meaty volunteer experience in your communities and nonprofits, in your towns, in your schools. But we say that should go really at the end of your resume to talk about community service. So that might be a little daunting for folks, but we really believe that you just are out there, up front, head on, you took some time off and you're ready to get back and you're not hiding it. And the first thing they see is your most recent work experience, which is extremely compelling and showcasing what value you were able to add to an organization. We follow it with education, technology, and again, just be very honest about what your community service or volunteerism was about. Okay. Lastly, we do like to focus on the resume being 2 pages. We know there are some folks that are participating here that have immeasurable experience, but being concise, given the fact that someone is not going to spend a lot of time on your resume, makes it easier for them to digest your experience and also enables you to tell your story more succinctly. So now I think we're going to head into the Q&A.
Great. Okay. And ladies, we have lots of questions that have come in. So the first one says, a common thread I hear is brand yourself and tell your story with a common message across all mediums, for example, LinkedIn, resumes, etc. How do I brand myself consistently while I'm researching potential jobs in different fields without seeming too scattered?
So you would, it's a great question, and you don't want to be so specifically branded that you can only go into one kind of job or one kind of industry. But you want to pick out the things that are common to different industries or different kinds of jobs that are really true about you. When I talked about the lawyer, if they're, especially a lot of the lawyers we deal with aren't really looking to go back into law careers, but if you can, strategic partnerships, you can apply that kind of skill to many different industries, many different kinds of businesses. And it's those kinds of things that you want to pull out from your background to brand yourself. So is it strong analytical skills with a really strong ability to explain complex data? That's something that can be applied to many different industries and companies. So really think about what are the strengths you bring that are applicable to any of the places you might be interested in.
Okay, great. Next question, and we've gotten this from several people, is what do you do if you want to return to work in a new or different field? That always seems to be a little more challenging.
Well, this is Addie here. We talk about job searches, and not all job searches are the same. What I mean by that is that, and Barbara Hill from Bentley, who works with us very closely, has this theory that there are 4 different kinds of job searches. One where you're looking for a similar job in the same industry you came from, and level 4 is a different job in a different industry, meaning that there are a lot more hurdles that you have to overcome if you're doing a level 4 job search versus a level 1 job search. That said, there are different jobs that exist today that didn't exist 5 years ago and 10 years ago. There's a lot of opportunity to take the skills that you have and transfer them into these new roles. For instance, if you have done business development before, business development is the same now as it was earlier, although there are new tools and new ways of finding new opportunities across industry and across the internet. So leveraging your skills and applying them to new areas is something that I think is extremely interesting and extremely valuable.
But more difficult. So you really want to be thinking, what's a reasonable transition at this point, and is it better for me to get back in close to what I used to do and then try to transition a little bit more? So you really need to kind of weigh the pros and cons of that, because it is more difficult to get into a brand new field or new kind of job.
Okay. What strategies do you recommend to combat age discrimination when returning to the workforce?
This is Carol. Okay, so the first thing, you want to make sure you're looking and acting as vibrant as possible. So, you know, if you need a wardrobe update or, you know, hair update, it's a good idea to kind of look your best and look motivated. What we do a lot around this issue is really stress the experience that we bring to the workplace because we have more years of years under our belt. So really, first of all, don't feel like you're old. I mean, if you're telling yourself you're old, you're going to project that you're old. Just say, I have a lot of value to provide to an organization. I have all this experience. Get your own mindset away from the age. Look and act as motivated as you can, and just go forward. I mean, there's a lot of value in having experienced people.
And this is Addie again. I would just like to add that, you know, when you go into an interview, not only focus on, you know, how you present yourself professionally in your look and style, and that may mean a quick trip to the mall to get to get something, or buying something online to just update your wardrobe so you look a little more current. But prepare for your meeting. What I mean by that is, if you're going to meet with someone, look them up under LinkedIn. All you have to do is type their name into Google. It takes less than 3 minutes, and you get a little bit of an overview of who the person is that you're meeting. Go onto the company's website. Go onto the Twitter account of the company. Go onto the you know, LinkedIn profile of the company and find out what people are talking about. You will look current and you will act current if you know what's going on in the industry and with that individual organization. And that is what will make you vibrant and present yourself competitively and compellingly.
Okay, we're getting lots more questions that are coming in. So here's a quick one, I think. It says, I haven't been in contact with my former supervisor in 3 to 4 years. How is it best to reconnect with him or her if there's been that kind of a gap, which you had mentioned early on in the webinar?
Well, once you've updated your LinkedIn, once you have a LinkedIn profile that's worthy of being out on the internet, you can just connect in LinkedIn with that person, and you know, most people will respond if they know you, and then you can use that as an entree, maybe follow up with an email. That's, you know, try to make it low key.
Okay. Another question. How much of a story do you share during an interview in regards to an employment gap? Kind of how much information and what information is either too personal or excessive?
Sometimes a personal story can be very meaningful. I had a situation which actually was the impetus for starting Reach Hire, where we had a car accident and my youngest child ended up with a very serious concussion, resulting in her missing a year of high school. And I used to not tell that story, and then I was in a meeting with a colleague and with a company, and it not only resonated with the woman, but it turned out that she had had a similar situation with her daughter, and it made a big difference. It also personalized the meeting and the conversation and made us closer. So I wouldn't go on and on about anything for a long time, but if there's something that is in your past that had an impact on you that you think is part of your story, I think it's valuable to share it in a very simple and straightforward way.
Okay. Here's one that says, you know, how do I handle this? I left work 10 years ago to take care of my family, and I was at a director level. Now I'm in my late 50s, and I'm ready to go back, and I'm seeking a lower level position. So how do I position this on my resume, whereas I was a director, but now I'm applying for a lower level position? How do I best do that?
Okay, this is Carol. It's tricky. It's a tricky question. So I think networking in to talk about yourself is really the best thing. I think it's going to be hard to just send a resume into an applicant tracking system and be able to make that link. I would, if I identified a company that had a position that I was interested in, I would find out who in the company I knew or who knew someone in the company and try to network in, because maybe you can get an employee referral in, and that would help with bridging the gap. Also focusing on what value you bring. Again, what is the job asking for, and how do you meet those requirements very specifically? What you can do to help further the cause of the job description is a way to do it as well. And you need to, it sounds like you do have reasonable expectations in terms of not expecting to go back as a director. It's really about, getting people to look at you. So those are some suggestions that I would make.
This is Addie again, and one thing that we stress is getting your foot in the door can make all the difference. So sometimes, depending on the opportunity, showcasing how much you can add and bring value and just getting that first opportunity then enables you to build some equity in your product, which is yourself, which then enables you to then get to that next point where you could actually move up. But sometimes it just doesn't happen immediately, and I think the expectation should be set that you're not going to go in at that director level, and that it might take some time. But don't as you don't have this opportunity to don't take an opportunity, because it could be a door or a window into the next step on your journey to get back to where you really want to be. It might just take you a little bit longer.
Okay, and here's a little bit of a similar question. It says, my academic credentials and experience should be viewed as assets, but it appears that potential employers are intimidated by that. How should I deal with this? I have a JD, an MBA, and an MS.
Well, I don't know. I think in these cases, if you think someone's going to be intimidated, maybe you don't lead with the credentials so much and lead more with what the value is you're bringing. I don't know how you determine whether someone is intimidated by you or not, but you can, choose to use those up front or not. And really, by focusing on what it is you can do for the organization, you really want to understand what the person's pain is and how you can help alleviate that pain. And if you stick with that rather than credentials, like we don't, in elevator pitches, we don't think people should, say, hi, I'm an BC MBA with a JD from, Columbia or whatever. I mean, it tends to put people off, like, what else can you say about yourself? Whereas if you're saying what value you bring, the credentials are just supporting that value. It's really not about the credentials.
Okay. This is another question about the gap. It says, how do you convince potential employers to not be concerned with an employment gap, especially when I know that I can quickly get up to speed with technological advances?
This is Addie. One thing you can do is, as Carol mentioned earlier in our webinar, update yourself. There's so many online courses that you can take. Many of them are free. You can join a group or a program. Certainly you'll learn a little bit about Retire. But, if you update your skills, you can address that straight on by saying, I just got certified in Google Analytics, or, I just got HubSpot certified. You can add these to your resume, and they are up-to-date, technologically important skills that show that you're, ready to go.
We encourage people to put self-certification courses up because it shows you're still in the game, you're motivated, you're self-motivated to get the skills you need.
This is Addie again, and I think that what we find is if you get the opportunity to do an informational interview, what they want to see is somebody who is ready, willing, and able to learn and is open to the challenges ahead. And if you can convince them that you're investing in yourself, that you've updated your skills, and that you're anxious and open to trying anything, that's the opportunity, and they'll see through some of the other things that they might not have otherwise.
Okay, so I've got a few quick questions. So first says, please clarify how long you recommend resume and CVs to be.
I had said earlier very quickly 2 pages. I don't think that should be longer than 2 pages.
Okay, next quick question. Should employment gaps be addressed in cover letters?
You know, we don't think most people read cover letters, so I wouldn't, it sounds defensive, I think, if you're addressing it there, so I wouldn't.
Okay, and then also, who do you recommend for professional references after a gap?
I think somebody that you've worked with very closely. And then the references don't mean as much because as you build your LinkedIn profile, people will see where you worked and you'll get some references on your LinkedIn profile. And an individual employer can just click on your LinkedIn profile, see who wrote the reference, go to their LinkedIn profile, learn about them. I don't even know very often if people actually give references anymore over the phone. We don't see that where we are. People are just background checking and then doing their own research online.
Okay, so this person is asking if 64% of positions are secured through employee referrals, how do you recommend connecting to organizations that you're interested in to gain this kind of referral? So basically, what companies, how do you know if a company is interested in that kind of referral?
Well, most companies that are hiring have employee referral programs because that's a great way to get people in. And again, LinkedIn is really key here because you want to find out who you know or who you know who knows someone in a company that you're interested in so that you can get referred by an employee.
So for instance, you can do a search specifically for on an individual company and see who works there that you're connected to or that you're connected to somebody that is connected to them and drill down. And it's all at your fingertips.
Okay, someone said, I feel my resume is all over the place due to very different work areas, and I have also worked internationally. Is that hurting me, and should I eliminate the international work altogether?
Well, again, if you've got your key themes going and you can support with the different work experience, then I don't think it's a problem. And it depends what the international experience is in because very often it shows additional breadth to have international experience. We've struggled with laws outside of our country, you know. I mean, I typically think that's a positive thing to have the international, but it's really a matter of connecting the dots on your resume for the person to show what your value is.
Okay, so here's a question that says, what do you recommend for individuals wanting to return to work part-time? Are there specific tools and techniques that apply to those people?
You know, let me just say that it's difficult to get hired from outside to a part-time position. Most of the time you need to be in the company and they can make it into a part-time position. Well, actually, when we talk about reach hire, we have which maybe we should be moving on when we're done with the questions. We have a program that actually puts people in part-time positions, but we have buy-in from the employers who do that. It's difficult to do it on your own.
Jane, how many more questions should we take?
We have about 7 more minutes, so it looks like, and we have about 7 more questions. So let's keep going if that's okay. This one says, I'm really surprised to see that you advocate revealing the dates for your degrees and your work experience. For those of us over 50, I've been advised not to list any info that could reveal my age. For example, no graduation date and only my past 15 to 20 years of work experience. So how do you want to address that one?
Well, we do this every day. We routinely help women get back to work that have been on career break, and some of them have been on career break a long time, and many of them are older. Everyone in the HR world and staffing understands that if you don't have date on your resume, that is dating yourself too. So by taking it off, it doesn't really do much because that's signaling the same thing.
Okay. Question, is LinkedIn important for individuals looking for jobs in the nursing and medical fields?
This is Carol. I don't have a lot of experience with that, and I think probably not as much, but what I would do is go look at people you know in the nursing and medical field and see if they're on LinkedIn, and if they are, then you should be too. There are pockets where people don't use LinkedIn that much, and that may be one.
But hospitals might have a LinkedIn profile, and they might have a group, so that's where you might learn a little bit more about that.
Okay, what are the most important technical skills to remain up to date on?
That really varies, this is Carol, with what your area is. Like we mentioned earlier, if you're in marketing, you better know social media and online marketing tools. If you're in finance, you better know the latest in Excel. So it really, really depends on what area you're in, and you can Google, you can find out what other people that are like you, what kind of skills they have to find out what you should be having. And look at job descriptions as well. What are they asking for?
Okay, quick question. Is it possible to return to the IT field after 10 plus years of hiatus? And if so, what do you recommend?
Absolutely. Again, lots of online courses, find a program. We actually just returned a woman to Microsoft that was a technical person and is in visual design.
She was out over 10 years, but she did a lot of her own self-teaching in programming languages. So yeah, that to me, that's actually, especially if you're willing to work full-time, but even part-time, that's an area that's so desperate for people that I think there's really good approaches there that you can take.
Okay, how do you explain an employment gap due to physical or mental health illnesses?
Well, again, you want to be, is it relevant to the conversation? Is it going to help you? So you really want to think about, I think it's fine to with a family issue that I needed to address and a health issue and just leave it at that. If you think it's important to share more, you can, but there's no need to unless it's going to further your cause.
Okay. Here's another question. It says, I'm a lawyer, but I think it can be for just about any field. It says, one of my issues is I was a lawyer who was looking to get into something other than law, but I'm having a hard time figuring out what, first of all, and then explaining why I don't want to practice law. So basically that transition question for anybody in any fields. What's your best recommendation?
Well, again, we come across a lot of lawyers who don't want to be in law fields. So. But again, what are the skills that you bring and how can they be applied to other areas? And, just don't lead with the JD. Lead with the business skills that you used as a JD. We run into that quite a bit, actually, and really getting clear about what you bring.
For instance, if you focused on strategic partnerships or negotiations or joint venture deals as part of being a lawyer, those are things that any business would really wish having in terms of skill set.
Okay, and one final question, and then I'm going to have you ladies talk a little bit about Reach Higher. So this person is saying, I have 7 years of marketing experience in one industry, transferred to a different industry for 3 years, but it was also in marketing, and I'm looking to go back to that first industry. But a recruiter has told me that I'm still being seen as only having 7 years of relevant experience and not 10. How do I best convey that I'm still offering 10 years of total marketing experience?
This is Addie, and I would say find a different recruiter because we feel having a broad experiences across an industry is extremely valuable, especially when marketing is changing so quickly and so many industries are popping up that didn't exist even 3 or 5 years ago. So I would say that it's very compelling to have 2 different marketing experiences.
Okay. Carol and Addie, could you move on to your next slide and tell us a little bit about Reach Higher before we finish up?
Okay, just quickly, there are some resources here that we've included, and you'll get those when you get the slides, so that will help you with some of the things we talked about. Addie's going to tell you a little bit about the Reach Higher approach.
So we designed this to create a concrete pathway to get women back to work that had been on career breaks. So we take a 3-pronged approach. with a proven curriculum to help support career reentry by focusing on technical skills refresh, professional skills update, and really helping on that personal presence. But via the skills refresh, the coaching support, and the actual project placement. So at the end of the Reach Higher experience, we segue you into a part-time position in a growing and innovative organization to get you to fill that resume gap, to get you some real-life experience in today's environment, and potentially even, if it works out for you and for the organization, a longer time and a longer term opportunity. And we've invested a significant amount of energy over the last couple of years in building this approach to get women back step by step. So it's 6 weeks, there's one-on-one coaching, and there's placement into a part-time project assignment, right now focused in the Boston area with Boston leading companies. We actually are going to be at the Mass Conference for Women tomorrow, so if there are any folks on the webinar today that are going to be there, please stop by our booth. And you can always learn more about us at reachhigher.com or by sending some information either via the website at info@reachhigher.com or via Carol at reachhigher.com.
Okay, a big thank you to Carol and Addie for leading our webinar today. We really appreciate it. And a few final details. Everyone will receive an email later today asking you to complete a short online evaluation about our program today. This webinar has been recorded and it will be available to view online next week, as will the PowerPoint slides on its own. And finally, our next career webinar will be held on Wednesday, January 14th, and it will focus on the art of negotiation. You can register for that and other upcoming webinars at bc.edu/alumnied. Thank you for attending today, and goodbye from Boston College.